So to start, I'll quickly run you through the application, the configuration of the application. And as you can see here in my code editor, I'm using Visual Studio Code. And I happen to create my application and install them in a folder called React Fundamentals, if you can read it from here. And instead of using the normal npm create React app, I did create Vite latest. So I'm using Vite instead of the regular create app. So as you can see, I have all my node modules and dependencies set in this particular folder. I didn't make so much changes except for the app.jsx where I changed the regular React spinning component and I just replaced it with my own component called board, as you can see here. So I created it and I imported it and I'm rendering it in my app component before it is finally rendered as a React app in the main.js file under the strict mode right here. So now if I should go back to my board.jsx where I have my entire board or my entire application rating, a lot of code. Sometimes I get messing in the code myself, but it's been worth the practice. So I'll quickly run you through my main board component. But before I go on to explain all the details in my board component, I'd like to also mention that I also created a component for an individual box. So I have this component right here called color box that will represent just one, like this one, just one of the many boxes. And so I made a component out of it before it's rendered in the board. Then the board will be rendered in the app, and the app will also be rendered in the main.jsx. So I'll start with the board. First of all, I imported the the hooks in functional component. And of course, I use functional component for this particular app. The class component is quite cumbersome, a lot of code to be written if I'm to use the class component, but I chose to use the functional component right here. I have another folder or app also that I use the class component. But as you can see here, I immediately imported the hooks for functional component, and then I also imported my color box component before I started writing out this functional component board. So I've given some comments, and the initial part says this is where I declared all my states, and some of the states would include the number of boxes that I will start with, and then also the colors that I'll use to assign to the boxes, and then out of those colors I'll choose one of the colors randomly. Uh, that would be the color to be guessed, and then also I set the timer to be 15 seconds for a start, and also of course since I'm using a set interval for the timer countdown, I would have to assign a particular ID or timer ID. So I have that to also state it out. And I also, of course, I did not do all these things at the beginning, but as and when it was needed, that's when I created them. So I have my score also, my counting, and all those stuff. I also use some effects. Of course, all these ones were created as and when I was developing the game. And if you should also start creating it, you will notice that you might require the services of these hooks, these effects in your app as well. So one of these, for instance, this use effect, what it does is it just selects one of the colors or sets my chosen color or the color to be guessed out of the colors that are generated from this function generate colors. So as soon as the game starts, the colors are generated because I have here in my return, under my return statement, where my app is generated. Uh, as you can see here, I have a display boxes function just running as soon as my app is opened or rendered. And what it does is within this function display boxes, uh, it takes advantage of the number of boxes that have been stated out initially and renders my color box component according to the number of boxes that have been stated out. So if, for instance, the number of boxes that was stated out at the initial stages was 6, then I'll have my color box component rendering 6 as well. I have my key that's associated with it. I'm using the index of the colors that will be generated from the color generate color function, which is right on top here. Where are you? There you go. So I have an array here that's being returned into the generate colors here. So an array, of course, will have indexes. So I'm assigning the individual indexes to the box component as listed. And as you can see here in the generate colors component, generating random colors and pushing them into an array. Once it's done, I'll return this array into this function, generate colors, which would be generated and assigned to the color box component individually. So that's what this display boxes function is doing right here. Then within the header, right on top here, within the header section, I would have the color that's randomly generated, and then I'll have the buttons, the difficult modes buttons, my score, my timer, and start game and reset game, all those things being generated from this return statement right here. Okay,